Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Gateway Office Hours. It's another Friday. I'm here with my co-founder, Carter Laren. I'm Ben Larson. And yeah, it's been another week. Episode 54 of Gateway Office Hours. Hit us up on Twitter with your questions, GTWY Inc., or place a comment below, Facebook, or if you're watching this as a recording, YouTube, podcast, whatever it be. We're here.
Apologize for being late, Ben.
Oh, we are a little bit late today.
You guys fucked
difficulties.
up.
It's Oakland time. No, you said it was Oakland time.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah.
We're good.
We have a special guest today, a very special guest, Max Savage Leveson, the talk show host of the Max Savage Show, The Hash. You've done things for NPR, Cannabis Now. You're all over the place, man.
Murder.
That's cool.
That's the next frontier.
Okay.
Well, you know.
You're also
Don't knock it till you try it.
There you go.
You're also the director of the Holman Prize for Lighthouse for the Blind, which is an interesting project. I'm trying to figure out how all these dots are connected. I think we're going to get there today.
Cool. I've been wondering how they're connecting too, so it sounds productive for all of us.
So Max interviewed me just a couple of weeks ago for The Hash, which was a great experience, a very professionally produced show. So we thought we would turn the tables and bring you in and figure out a little bit about the host.
Right. This is what an unprofessionally produced show looks like, so
Ooh.
now you know.
But
Hey, we're just hashing it out.
he came dressed
right.
accordingly. I would
Yes,
say.
he did. Yes.
Here, I can jump.
Yeah, I don't think we have a camera that can
Oh,
get
it's pretty wide over
the
here.
full glory of your attire. But
It looks great on the audio podcast.
Yeah.
So
maybe, I was going to say, can you talk a little bit about your background? Because you're not like a cannabis person who started doing a podcast. You're a journalist who started doing cannabis. Well, I don't mean that personally, although that may be also true. But
It
you're a
happens.
journalist
It
who
really did.
started covering cannabis.
Uh-huh.
Can you kind of talk about that journey a little bit and what you saw in the industry and what led you to start covering cannabis?
That's a lot of different questions, but yeah, we'll
Well,
hash
you
it out.
got an hour.
We'll
man,
hash it out.
Yeah, my background has mostly been in music, quote unquote journalism, if you can call the narcissistic act of getting free tickets to shows and having vapid conversations with musicians journalism.
Yeah.
But it was a really
I used
great
to be
time.
in that business also, and you can call it that. if
Great.
you want. It's fine. We can legitimize that entire experience. Go ahead.
Fabulous. And I was living in France for a while and working with a really amazing video production company called La Blagothèque that for, I guess, a little over 10 years now has been making these videos called the takeaway shows, where they get, for the most part, American bands who are coming through town to do these like one-take videos on the streets and in people's apartments. And there's a real emphasis just on the candid element of things. And that was sort of how I got into that world. And it was pretty weird and euphoric time. And then after that, I ended up going to the School of Journalism at Cal. They made the mistake of giving me a master's degree. And I got a gig at NPR Music in DC with the Tiny Desk concerts. So I was doing some stuff for them. And
Still in music.
Yeah, still in music.
Yeah. Okay.
And the cannabis thing really just came about through a really amazing professor at the journalism school who connected me with the great Admiral David Downs, who at the time was looking for someone to produce this fledgling podcast, The Hash. And at that point, I knew next to nothing about the world of cannabis and had pretty limited experience with putting it in my body.
What's
this music playing? It sounds really nice.
Here we go.
I don't know why it's playing, actually, Mr. Larson.
Was there something about music that kind of like started pushing you away and looking towards pursuing a different, vertical or?
I think for the most part, music editors are a real pain in the ass to deal with. Has been my experience. I have some really, really great ones too, but to be honest, the editors I've worked with in the cannabis industry have been for the most part, so much more supportive, so much more responsive, and a lot more eager to collaborate. I mean, I think in part it's just because there's less people trying to do it. You know, like everyone and their grandma wants free tickets to the Wilco show and talk to them about dad rock.
It's still the cannabis industry, while booming, is still quite small and very community driven, and like you work in it for a little bit, and all of a sudden you feel like you know everyone, right? It's
I feel like I know like 6 or 7 people.
There you go.
That's most people.
Well, you've interviewed more than that.
That's true. That's true. I guess no is a word. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So, did you have kind of expectations about the industry before you started, and like how's that changed? Because you've been going for a year at least, right?
More than that now, probably closer to 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what did you expect coming in, and what's different?
That's a really good question. I'm kind of trying to, I think maybe more than anything, I just had such a limited sense of what cannabis can do.
Yeah.
Okay.
And through David's mentorship, through working with other editors, through folks I've interviewed, I think I just have a much wider appreciation of its benefits. In terms of the industry itself, I guess I always expect it to be weirder than it is, and kind of expect to meet people who are weirder than they are.
Sure.
We're not
They're
weird
too
enough.
normal.
We're not weird enough.
They're pretty normcore.
You
for the
did
most
come
part.
from the music industry, which is less than normal, behind the scenes at least.
That's true. Yeah.
It's quite odd.
Things can get kind of freaky over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So your standard is different than most people's probably for normal.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah. I mean, just a guess that I have. So, okay, so you came in, it was a little bit more normal than you expected.
Yeah.
How have you seen, you've been interviewing a lot of people in the industry over the past almost 2 years, I guess. Has anything changed? Because, culturally there seems to be this, we've seen a lot of legislation pass. There's been, I think it was within the last 2 years, I think that the public support for cannabis legalization flipped past 50%. What's evolved about the industry? Is it the same industry it was when you came in and started talking to people, or has it changed?
I feel like I just meet squarer and squarer people.
Really?
TBH. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's a good
I think
summary. I think that's fine. If that's the truth, then that's fine.
By no means do I profess to be like fully integrated into this world and to have like a terribly wide understanding of like what the industry is, but I feel the more and more people I meet just remind me of characters in Silicon Valley, the show.
No, I mean, I think, I think that's a good way of describing, frankly, a trend that we've seen. We're one of those we're guilty of that, right? I mean,
but that's
we're the
okay.
Silicon Valley people coming in.
I'm not passing judgment.
We are seeing more and more people coming in from I will say mainstream. It's not all Silicon Valley. Sometimes it's other industries or people from especially the kind of Wall Street people coming in at some levels, but and real estate, kind of traditional real estate people coming in. But I think that's it's a good
money.
summary. Is like there's more and more squares.
Yeah.
That's fine. It's going to happen as cannabis goes mainstream. Right.
Yeah. I think so.
So I've noticed you've talked to kind of a lot of the local proprietors that have created products that people love, and like Swerve being one of them recently.
David did that interview.
Oh, David did that interview. Okay. How are they being affected by this kind of shift that you're seeing? Because it's like you have people coming in that are immersing themselves in the industry and trying to learn it and trying to bridge that connection between this massive growth. You have the people that are coming in that are just applying what they knew previously, not bothering with the culture, and then those that are steeped in the old culture, and like it's all happening very quickly. Like it's at an astronomical rate, right? Like, what kind of tension do you see that creating, especially for some of these local businesses?
I mean, what was the phrase you just used? Not bothering with the culture?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of sums it up.
Yeah.
Has sort of been what I see, you know, to some degree. And forgive me, maybe projecting a little bit. It's the same shit you see when you go through the mission and you just see people living in two different worlds who are just kind of oblivious to the history there and the culture there and the community there.
Yeah. What advice
yeah.
would you give to someone who's in the industry now and maybe building a product or, you know, running a dispensary or something about how to manage the change?
How to manage the change? I'd probably suggest that they take some LSD at some point. Take some time just to reflect.
Often a good idea.
Yeah. Beyond that, I mean, I think, you know, I really don't want to take this holier than thou position because I'm totally guilty of this too. But like, there strikes me consistently as just such a continual obliviousness to racial equity in this business, in the way that I think people, especially in a place like Oakland that is so racially diverse and has such a rich history, could really just benefit from. Yeah.
So how would you tell someone to act on that from a, you know, let's say I've got an edibles company I've started, or I'm running a dispensary, like what are some things that you would recommend I do?
Honestly, I mean, it sounds kind of facetious, but just like go to cool parties, go to places where people who've been here for a while are. I just think it's really easy, especially with all the folks that are moving here for, you know, reasons X, Y, and Z, to hermetically seal themselves off. And again, I'm to some degree guilty of this too. I don't mean to project that I get it.
You don't go to all the parties, is what you're saying.
There's always a party going on somewhere, as David
true.
Byrne said. I just think it's really important for anyone, wherever they are, to get a sense of where they are and what the history of that place is.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's the advice you would kind of give to someone starting a business. What would you tell kind of mainstream people who are kind of looking at the industry as consumers, but more out of curiosity and like, gee, what's going on? Like, California passed this law. There seems to be a bunch of hippies doing some stuff. I don't know about it.
I mean, to
like,
be honest,
what would you say?
I don't think the mainstream people are saying that. I think the people are saying, all right, for the most part.
Yeah, fair enough. Although I guess I'm really targeting kind of the people kind of staying on the fringe. And, you know, there is still a large percentage of the population that looks askance at the industry.
Yeah.
What message would you give to them about? Because, you know, even though you came from the music industry,
Yeah.
which is in and of itself odd, you still came from the outside and had the opportunity to like, interview and meet lots of people. So you should have a perspective that is maybe a little bit better informed from a cultural observation perspective you can kind of transmit.
Yeah. Word. I mean, I mean, there are those people in the fringes, but to some degree, it's sort of like, you know, this shit's happening, and like, there are people who are just going to be inevitably resilient to change, as is the case with everything ever. And, you know, like, I was thinking about it walking down the street the other day, and like, there's some folks chilling outside the front door and smoking a J, and it was like, you know, that smells good to me, but I could see it bothering someone, and like, fine, you know, I can appreciate that someone wouldn't want to be inhaling smoke going down the street, or smelling it when they're going down the street. And I think there's just sort of, to some degree, like a mystery zone factor, right?
Sure.
Of just seeing what happens and seeing how it plays out, and I'm sure there's going to be legislation that changes and modifies itself. You know, my instinct response to your question is just to say tough shit to them.
Sure.
But
sure. Well, part of the reason I'm asking is you brought up, you know, when you came in the industry, and you know, I'm going to go out on a limb and guess you weren't a Bible thumping conservative who came into the industry. What, you know, but you came in and said, oh, it has more applications than I thought. There's more uses for cannabis, and I have a greater appreciation for the plant.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, do you think, one of the reasons I'm asking is, do you think that will, intuitively, it seems like that will help kind of mainstream people be more acceptant, or be more tolerant of the industry generally, rather than kind of that 70s show stereotype that they probably think.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that is, it's a question of branding. It's a question of like how you access the senior citizen market, how you connect with those folks. It's a question of getting the information out there, but I'm not really sure how one does that most effectively. Because as the numbers show, like the population at large is drifting towards acceptance and understanding, but like the people who are resilient, I'm not entirely sure what you can do unless they have that personal connection. Doing a story for the Chronicle now, going to a bunch of different dispensaries and just talking to folks who work there about what their families think about what they do.
Yeah.
And I spoke to a really, really interesting person at the Apothecarium on Market Street who said that her parents are Baptist missionaries, really socially conservative, had long been resilient to cannabis. And her dad was diagnosed with stage 3 melanoma, and they came into the Apothecarium and got him on some treatment. And A, it's made a difference for him, and B, she said that now everyone in her family is using cannabis in some form or another.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. But I guess the question I'm sort of getting at is like, if you don't have a granddaughter who works at the Apothecarium, like how do you bridge that divide?
I think having these people in your families and everything, it's really kind of, the linkages are starting to be made. I know my mom has reached out to me and been like, hey, Aunt so-and-so needs a recommendation for like someone that knows about medical cannabis. And it's like, oh, where is she? San Jose. It's like, oh, go talk to Elemental or something. It's like they have products. And then a week later, it's like, thanks a lot, that worked. And I'm like, great. I'm like, that's awesome. I think that the network effect is starting to take effect.
Right, and they trust you, as family or as someone in the industry. What I would assume is what happened is that, something you said or the way that you present yourself convinced them that
I'm a square, right? It's like, it's
let's not get down on ourselves, guys. But yeah, right. I mean, there's a degree of quote unquote legitimacy that probably, I would assume, resonated with them.
Yeah, I think so. It's but going back to those personal stories, I think people are being more public about it. Social media is proliferating it a lot more these days, and so I think it's going to accelerate kind of that shifting of the image of the industry.
Ditto.
So can we talk about the hash for a sec?
Let's do it.
Can you just describe to people what kind of what the goal, purpose, kind of theme of the hash is? Because there's lots of different cannabis kind of podcasts out there.
Yeah, totally. So the hash is generally a pretty short form podcast. It's rare that an episode is longer than 10 minutes. It's 99% of the time pretty narrative based, and I, as a producer and an occasional host of it, really try to remove myself from the equation as much as I can, which is something, or just a notion that I sort of picked up from working with the Kitchen Sisters, who are a really amazing San Francisco-based radio production duo. Do a lot of really fabulous stuff from Morning Edition, All Things Considered, and their goal time and time again is just to remove themselves and just to make it this other person's story. Yeah. And not that it's necessarily better or worse, but it's a pretty heavily edited show. Generally do a 30, 40, 50-minute interview for 5 minutes of tape, which is, a different thing than a 50-minute conversation. But I think what I really enjoy about it the most is that I love the editing process, and I love kind of finding the rhythm of things and finding a way to incorporate music, incorporate sound effects, incorporate clips from movies in a way that just gives it this rhythm. And, inevitably sometimes it feels a little precious as a result. But is a concentrated thing.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the primary audience?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
That's not the answer I
don't know.
expected from you.
I mean, my mom, I assume. You know.
Is it?
Yeah, I'm sure she's listened in a few times. I don't know. I mean, I think to some degree it's contingent on who the interview is with, and what I've found pretty consistently is that it's the folks who are in the quote unquote cultural sphere, the arts and culture sphere,
Mm-hmm.
who can generate the most interest in it from their
Own
audience,
social media.
in their own social media. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fair.
I mean, to some degree, it's just a question of like who's the audience that uses SoundCloud, and I don't mean that facetiously. It's like, you know, there are subsets of the population that repost and forward things onto each other via SoundCloud, which is like the main way that the hash is distributed. And
Really?
the people that don't. Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, it's on iTunes.
Sure, but
It's on
SoundCloud
Stitcher.
is you're right. It's its own kind of community almost. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you know, maybe inevitably that's why we do a series called High Five. It's really hard-hitting journalism where a musician talks
Sounds
about-
like it.
Yeah. A musician or really anyone for that matter just talks about 5 songs they like to listen to when they're stoned. You know, it's
Yeah.
really like pretty existential shit. And, you know, those tend to do really well.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably because of the crossover
Yeah.
to a musician. right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So, what do you think the hot kind of directions are for the industry? Where are things going? What's gonna succeed? What's not? You know, be Nostradamus for us and tell us what's gonna happen.
In 43 years, there's going to be an edible, let's see, what's it going to be? It's going to be a wild boar,
Okay.
and you can go out and hunt it, but the meat
It'll be infused
is
with-
infused. Exactly.
That's
It's like a back to
Wow.
nature kind of thing.
That's
Yeah.
really interesting. So
Westworld is
you're going
Yeah,
to go
little
after. You're kind of going after a different population as well. You've now got the hunters involved
Oh.
in.
Are they not involved yet?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, I feel like there's some libertarian rural crossover
Sure,
vibe
that's
going
true.
on.
Yeah, there's definitely a
Yeah.
libertarian vibe. And, yeah, that's
Ben
true.
says you have something on top of your head.
Do I?
He was pointing at the top of your head for a second.
I was pointing to you as the rural libertarian.
Yes, I have never hunted boar.
That's definitely.
But it's
the
a great
takeaway.
idea.
Yeah, right. A less snarky answer.
I
to
do
your
love
question.
bacon. So
I mean, bacon.
if it were,
bacon has a lot of merits.
you know,
Yeah.
naturally captured bacon that was THC infused, I don't think that sounds too bad.
No,
frankly,
it sounds great.
Yeah.
A less snarky answer to your question. I mean, I think it's just really hard for me to imagine a world in which like the little guy can really hold on with this huge surge of big business and big money.
So you're concerned about the big business and big money coming in
Yeah.
for the existing kind of smaller players in the
Yeah,
market.
totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I think to make a generalization, like the quote unquote weird people
Right.
who I meet, you know, aforementioned, I mean, those aren't the people behind the big bucks.
Right.
Right.
Those are family farms, and they're, you know, incredibly in tune with what they're growing, and they're empathetic in a way that I think you find less often with big growers. And again, you know, inevitably to a certain degree.
Right.
But I mean, those people can be pretty fucking loony. It's hard to imagine them being able to keep up.
There are
to
some.
put it frankly.
there are some people trying to, you know, help cultivate that and
Mhm.
bring them power. I know.
Yeah.
I know Flo Khanna has been working with a lot of
Mhm.
local growers to kind of string them together and
Help empower them and
Empower the-
yeah.
Yeah,
kinda crowd,
I
yeah.
really hope that happens.
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I mean, it sounds the analogy that I was immediately thinking of was frankly coffee, because
Yeah.
it used to be local coffee shops and Starbucks kind of came in, and now I remember this was probably 10 years ago now, but I remember standing on a street corner in the financial district and realizing that 3 of the 4 corners were Starbucks.
Do you know that Lewis Black skit?
No, I don't.
He says, the end of the world is when you leave a Starbucks and you see another Starbucks across the street.
Right.
I think his line was, who the fuck is this for? People with Alzheimer's.
Yeah. Right. Right. So, but I think, and look, there's some value to having Starbucks around. I don't think there's no value in Starbucks. It's standardized and you know what you're getting.
Yeah.
And blah, 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 blah.
And it's not bad.
Right. And they theoretically, they could have economies of scale, although I still think they massively overcharge for everything. But that's kind of the analogy that I'm thinking of when you talk about this. It's like, okay, well, there's all these little local people and here comes some big guys. The flip side is you could use maybe the beer or wine analogy where, there's Budweiser.
Right.
But there's a lot of local craft breweries that still succeed and do well and make livings kind of at the scale that they wanted in the first place anyway.
I think that's sort of the ideal scenario.
And then eventually they scale up and people get mad at them for selling out.
Right.
Eventually they sell to Anheuser-Busch and then everyone hates them.
Right.
Well, Anchor Brewing just sold to Sapporo, I believe. So that was the most recent one.
Yeah,
after Lagunitas sold to Heineken and...
Yeah.
Not that I follow the alcohol industry.
Right. Not that you're a drinker.
Vodka.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that is not water, folks. Okay, so is there anything that you would tell those, I'll use your term, loony people about how to, what would you recommend? Would you say, like, look, make what you can now, sell out and go away, or like here's how you kind of maintain yourself and what you need to do to kind of make sure that you're protected and can kind of carry on?
I have no fucking idea. Yeah.
That's a fair thing.
As Al Gore would say, it's sort of a bit of an inconvenient truth.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair
enough. I want to take...
Let's get cheery.
Well, I want to take a brief tangent and just dig into you a little bit more personally. I mentioned the Lighthouse, and it's just... I looked it up a little bit. It's a cool project. It's completely unrelated to everything we've talked about thus far, so I'm just putting that mental switch in there for the audience. But you're running a prize for this blind organization. Can you just talk about the organization a little bit and what you're doing there and trying to accomplish?
Yeah, Lighthouse for the Blind, specifically Lighthouse for the Blind in San Francisco, because there are other lighthouses around the country, is a really fabulous, I've drank the Kool-Aid a little bit. It's a really fabulous organization that provides a really wide range of services to blind and low vision folks. And a couple of years ago now, I'm kind of going to try to skirt the details here so I don't misspeak. A gentleman by the name of Don Serkin died. He had no relationship to Lighthouse. He never met, as far as I know, anyone who worked there. He was a real joie de vivre kind of guy. He was walking on his hands into his 80s and hiking and living big, but had pretty low vision and had sort of been in denial of it his whole life and never used a cane. And as far as I understand, sort of just convinced himself, like, fuck it, I'm going to keep going. And when he died, he left us $125 million.
That's a nice day.
Decent day, yeah.
Yeah.
As
Not
far
for
as
him,
I mean,
for the Lighthouse.
You can't get rich on that, but it's a lot of money.
Sure, it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And as far as I understand it, I wasn't with Lighthouse at this point yet. His lawyer just emailed the organization and said, there's a dude, and the dude is dead, and
he left this to you.
It's like one of those Nigerian emails you get, and it's like,
spam from the prince. And going forward in time a little bit, one of the things that we've been able to do with this amazing gift is start this thing called the Holman Prize, which is named after James Holman, who was a 18th century British Royal Navy veteran who was either fully or almost fully blind, who circumnavigated the globe.
Wow.
Obviously, with other people, but in a sense as a solo journey.
Right.
He just kind of did it. Yeah. And he kept like a fully legible diary.
Wow.
And was kind of a Renaissance man. There's a really wonderful book about him called Sense of the World, which sort of sparked the interest in him. Jason Roberts is the author of that book, who's a really wonderful local author. So we started this prize this year, and I'm part of a team of folks who are working on bringing this thing to life. And it started in January. We sent out essentially a request for pitches, and blind folks had to submit a 90-second YouTube video saying what they would do with $25,000. And, I think for a lot of folks, that was already sort of a challenge.
Right.
To put yourself on camera, to put yourself out there. And we had over 200 people apply from 27 different countries. And from there, we picked a group of roughly 50 semifinalists, whittled that down to 10 finalists, and we announced our 3 winners via the Washington Post a few weeks ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Sounds
awesome.
like a similar process to what we
Yeah,
do.
a little bit.
'Cause,
Right.
Put
Right.
the
Sans
offer out
the
there.
Washington Post.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. I think.
And so what was the kind of what were you evaluating the different pitches on, and like
Sure.
the 3 that were selected, kind of what were the winning ideas?
Totally. So, I mean, off the bat, it was a question of whether it was a feasible project, whether it was a compelling project. Moving along in the process, we asked the semifinalists to write up a pretty detailed budget, itinerary, and some of them were more realistic and compelling than others. And we did an interview on the phone with all the finalists just to kind of get a sense of what they were like on the fly.
what were you looking for during the phone interviews?
More than anything, a sense of personality, because these people who are all over the world are ambassadors for our organization, and we want people who can be dynamic and
Right.
be articulate. Yeah, the questions in those interviews were like, if you could sit on a bench with anyone from history, who would it be? It wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't necessarily the hardest hitting stuff, but it was really telling.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the 3 folks we ended up picking were all, incredibly compelling, and I can tell you about them if you'd like.
Yeah.
So Ahmet is one of our winners, who's from Turkey, but now incidentally lives 3 blocks from San Francisco Lighthouse for the Blind.
Oh.
And he is a solo kayaker. And he has adapted all of this technology that was originally designed for fishermen to help him navigate.
Oh, like sonar kind of stuff. That's super interesting.
So he's going to be paddling with his feet and using this technology with his hands. And he's training to kayak the Bosphorus Strait by himself,
Wow.
which is what divides Asia Turkey from Europe Turkey.
Gotcha.
And that'll be in a few months. And he's going to be doing a lot of training around the bay in the meantime.
Huh.
That's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Penny is one of our winners, who is a blind baker from the UK, also a veteran of the Royal Air Force, like James Holman.
Okay.
And she has this baking show she puts on YouTube, and she's going to be traveling to 7, 8, 9 different countries and filming videos with chefs around the world.
Cool.
She's going to Malawi, she's going to China, she's going to Australia, San Francisco, California, and a whole bunch of others. Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah.
And the 3rd winner is Ojok, who's from Uganda, and he's a beekeeper by trade. And it's insanely hard for blind and low vision folks to get the resources they need where he lives, and a lot of them end up begging on the street. So he's using the money to train 30 blind folks in Uganda to become beekeepers.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's
I
incredible.
wouldn't say this, at Lighthouse, but it's pretty fucking crazy shit.
Yeah.
And, at the end of the day, it's like the goal, in one sense, the goal is to be able to be a force for good in these individuals' lives, but it's also to further this conversation about what blind folks can do in the world.
Well, so it's to kind of draw it back to cannabis, and
Yep.
it's an interesting anecdote. There's a lot of parallels between your selection process and also what we're looking for, and I think a good message to people that are just out there that are applying to these programs. It's to realize it's not all about you and your pursuit, but it's like how you fit into the vision of an organization and really the story you can tell together with the people that you're going to be working with.
Yeah, and to tell you the truth, believe it or not, I was thinking about you guys a lot during it, because one of the first times that we met, you were telling me that in your application process, when you had to ask questions, it's when you knew that it was a red flag that it wasn't going to work out. And it was kind of the same thing for us.
Yeah.
As soon as you start, excuse me, as the person making these decisions, start wondering, well, what does that mean? Well, what's that? What's that?
Mhm.
It's like a really good sign that.
Start digging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although the other, I mean, you're saying it's not all about you. The other takeaway that I kind of got away from that, though, or from your story, was how much actually it was also a little bit about the person themselves and not just the project. And I think
Totally.
founders often aren't told by investors when it's them, right? Because investors, it's very uncomfortable to say, I love your project, I love the idea,
Mhm.
I don't really like you. They don't say that ever.
Yeah.
But often
That
that's
they're thinking it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so and it's interesting. One of the reasons I asked about kind of what we were looking for on
Yeah.
the phone was, you wanted to see this personality. Presumably, part of it was like, does it resonate with you in some meaningful way? And you specifically talked about, can they be an ambassador for you?
Absolutely.
Right? And I think that's something as investors that we think about, less about can they be an ambassador for Gateway or for the investor, but more about like, you're going to have to be an ambassador for your company.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
you're the figurehead.
Yeah.
And are you a good figurehead?
Yeah.
Right. And if you're not, that's a concern, right? Because there's a lot of evangelism that happens
Right.
when you're building an early stage company, because you
Yeah.
typically have no money, so you got to convince people through some other means.
Can I offer you guys some
I'm
hand
good,
lotion?
but do you want
No,
some hand lotion?
I'm
Did
good.
you guys?
Thank you.
There's a little cannabis in it.
I have some of Dr. K's cannabis lotion over there, and it actually works. I have eczema. It actually works pretty well.
Nice. I don't know what that one is.
That
I remember
was
I
not
got
like
it here.
product placement thing. It's okay, but yeah.
Oh, I think we have some right over there.
Oh, was that
Oh,
from our
thanks.
basket of goodies?
Michael, do you want some?
What? I'm okay.
I can throw it to you if you want.
I can't catch.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, and to clarify, we didn't dislike them. We just thought some were better ambassadors than others.
Sure,
but
I
it's
wasn't
true,
trying
they
to
are.
put those words in your mouth.
Or a larger vision, perhaps.
Yeah, right. There we go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's true. They are figureheads for
Yeah.
us and ambassadors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's super interesting. So what's next? What are you gonna do with the hash? Are you taking it anywhere? What are you like? How's it gonna evolve?
Yeah, so the hash has, in a sense, been on a little bit of a hiatus. David took a job a few months ago as the full-time, first ever cannabis editor of the San Francisco Chronicle.
Yep.
And we're really thrilled that we're going to be able to continue it
Mhm.
under the auspices of SF Gate and the Chronicle. And we've sort of just been kind of laying out a battle plan a little bit and getting a sense of what's feasible, in what ways
I mean,
we can.
that's pretty exciting. That's some
Yeah, we're
serious
really thrilled.
distribution, right?
Now that he is at the Chronicle, there's a lot of opportunities to interview not just subjects of stories, but reporters who've been doing these stories and kind of get an extra level to it.
It's a little bit meta, but yes.
It's pretty fucking meta. Yeah.
Yeah. So does the audience have any kind of questions about, because I have a question, but I think it's something that I anticipate might come from the audience anyway, so I'd rather you guys ask questions. Jesse, you've got something? We have an audience cam anymore or no?
Yeah, we
We do, Michael. We have an audience cam. Yeah, I think it's the,
Okay.
yeah, there you go.
So
But
I know
Princess isn't in the frame.
Oh,
No.
you got to lean in, Princess. There we go.
There we go.
This is so high tech.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
He knows that I don't like to be on camera.
We're just going to set things up during the show.
Can you zoom in on Princess a little more?
So you spoke a little earlier. You guys were discussing, Silicon Valley types. Probably that includes us, the professionals that are coming in from other industries, and just the lack of seeing the history, what's happening around us, and then you also spoke about equity. And I'm wondering how you sort of bridge that, especially given the nonprofit experience that you're dealing with the blind here. How do we not, what would you suggest that, I'm also passionate about, I live in West Oakland, so I see what's happening around us. But you're right, a lot of people do not. And how do we come in as professionals, come in from Silicon Valley with our professional backgrounds, and not overlook the equity piece and what's happening around us?
Yeah, that's the question, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would by no means pretend to have a decent answer to that question. I, in a sense, am as guilty of that as anyone else. I have like next to no black friends. I have very few Hispanic friends, and it's really frustrating to me. And
How do you address that, even for yourself? How do you address that?
I think, frankly, the first step is just like coming to terms with
Yeah.
that. I think there's
Recognizing it, right?
recognizing
Yeah.
it, yeah, and going out of your way to meet people who aren't like you. And I think that's not easy, and it's getting harder and harder. So I'm sorry I don't have a better answer
that's
for
okay.
you.
And
but
then
I mean, it's huge, and it's
Yeah.
what's happening everywhere, I think.
And then with the work that you're doing with the Hash
Mhm.
and the San Francisco Chronicle,
Yeah.
how will you do any spotlights around equity and?
Oh,
how-
yeah. Definitely. I had a really awesome opportunity a couple weeks ago to chat with the gentlemen of Run the Jewels, the hip hop group, Killer Mike and LP, the former of whom is like very vocal about these issues. And I thought, as cool as it was to talk to them about the music, it was equally as important to talk to them about those notions of racial equity in the industry. They're both pretty avid consumers, to put it lightly. Yeah. But I think, and there are folks who definitely know more about this. Wait, what's the policy? Do we stop during the train or keep going through the train?
Just
Oh,
keep-
the train's a guest, just
Okay,
allowed
cool.
to show
Sounds
up
good.
whenever she
I think,
wants.
I think there are going to be a lot of stories to tell about the way that the city of Oakland is trying to create a sense of equity, but maybe not necessarily succeeding in doing so. Yeah.
So I mean, we're kind of now, because we're in Oakland, we get, we see a lot of what's happening over here in Oakland,
Yeah.
and trying to address the equity issue and coming up with kind of the equity program,
Mhm.
the 50-50 split. What efforts are going on in San Francisco currently that you're aware of? Or is it not a whole lot?
In my experience, it's not a whole lot. Yeah.
It's interesting considering how close it is.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, there could be something going on I don't know about.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't want to claim to be the expert on that.
I got you.
Yeah.
Jesse, you're holding the mic.
Hey there, I'm Jesse. I do. Have
I know, we met like half an hour ago, dude.
Sorry,
Yes,
my
but
memory isn't
the
as
audience
good as yours.
might not know. He's addressing the world.
The world.
All the 5 people that are watching
Gotcha.
now know he's Jesse.
Gotcha.
So this is a question for everybody on stage. It's about Prop 64. I know there was a lot of talk about it. Some people were skeptical because, it didn't really. It pitted itself as something that would allow smaller markets to grow before the big companies would come in, but a lot of people say that it wasn't enough. So I was going to ask about what do you think the people on the ground floor are going to do about creating their small businesses and growing, but that's kind of a question for everybody. Nobody can really answer that. Maybe a better question would be, how do you think would big business will come in as they always do, and what part of the markets will they dominate after the 5 years is over? If I have my law down right, I mean, Prop 64 was a long one. to
Yeah,
read.
I mean, we have our views about laws and how they're implemented and politics in general. Do you want to go into that? No, he doesn't. I'll answer.
Well,
for him.
look, I mean, I'll say this much. Laws generally have the opposite of their intended effect, more often than not. And I have a relative who is a grower, and voted against Prop 64, along with many of the people around. It's a couple of them, him and her, but a lot of their friends voted against Prop 64. And on the flip side, you've got a lot of people saying, well, it's not really what we want, but it's a step in the direction. And so it has value there. I think, I'm not an expert political theorist. I know kind of my own views about politics and where I think things ought to go. How to get them there is a little bit of a tactical nuance that I don't really understand. And I think, we can play devil's advocate. There's problems with Prop 64 on the one hand. On the other hand, from a cultural perspective, right? People all over the country, all they know about Prop 64 is it's legalized cannabis. That's all they know, if they know anything about it.
Yeah.
And so that sends a cultural signal, regardless of whether it actually sucks. It sends a cultural signal to people around the world like, hey, the 6th biggest economy in the world just legalized, right? And so there's value in that message alone, even if there's a lot of mess in the legislation itself. How much that value is worth versus how fucked up the bill is, I'm not the guy to measure that, but
and I'll just kind of get into more of the detailed nuances. Like big business, regardless of whatever legislation you put in place, will find its way, right? It's money. Like money finds its way into commerce.
And in fact, actually, the more regulation you put in place, the easier it is for big business as opposed to small business.
They got lobbyists. They have money to work around inefficiencies. The key is that when you're building a small business and how you fund that business and get your start, like it's okay to run a small business. You don't have to become some Goliath, right? There's a lot of people that like running a single shop or having a brand that's just local, and that's fine. But where the current market is at, it makes it very difficult to fund those businesses, because typically those businesses would go get a small business loan from a bank. Those aren't being handed out. And so where do you go to get capital? And it's like, it's not a typical play for a venture capitalist. In fact, it's a very bad play for a venture capitalist, because you're not going to get a return. And so that's where a lot of the friction is coming from, right?
And that leaves you maybe with hard money, which is really going to go into stuff that produces quick returns, like grows, right? Where it's like, okay, great, I'm gonna make 25% a year or more, which is what some of these people are making right now by lending to grows. So, but yeah, I think I do want to emphasize the regulation thing, and I think a lot of people don't realize, and this is what's happened. Frankly, it's one of the things that happens in a lot of big industries. It happens in pharma. It happens in banking. It happens all over the place. And it's, you put in legislation with the idea that like, oh, well, we need to regulate it this way, and we're going to, have all these rules. Those rules cost money, right? And if you need a team of lawyers to navigate them, small businesses will not exist, right? And so, as an example, big pharma would love, I think, cannabis to be moved to Schedule 2, right? And then enforced like a motherfucker, right? Because they would be like, great, we can afford the whole fucking FDA process and everything else. No one else can. Goodbye, small players, right? And so I think you have to take that into account when you start thinking about how you're regulating a business, that you really do, regulations generally only favor large corporations.
I think you hit his pressure point. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, if I could just piggyback that, if there's, unless there's something you want to talk about.
I should
pressing.
stop ranting, because that could go on for hours.
Yeah, I mean, Monsanto just, created their first patent for a weed genotype.
Right.
They also
crazy.
just created a venture fund too.
Yeah, and there was something else I was going to say about that, but I'm just wondering, now that that's happening, what's to stop them from just basically patenting, spreading their seed all over the local farms, just like they did with, corn.
It's a nice image.
Yeah, it's a nice word choice.
Yeah. Literally.
So what stops them from fucking the industry is basically the paraphrase there.
Yeah, it's going to schedule. Like, isn't that the trajectory now? They're trying to deschedule it and just deschedule.
Well, deschedule it is fine. Schedule 2 is rescheduling, which is a problem.
Which is essentially what's happening now in legislation, right? They are trying to reschedule it to 2, not deschedule it.
I don't know that anyone's trying to really do anything right now.
Okay.
I mean, there's always different opposing legislative proposals. I don't think anything really has significant traction at the moment.
Yeah. Everyone's posturing right now.
Right. But to answer your question, I think there's not a lot to prevent someone like Monsanto from doing that. They get away with it in agriculture, right? So, the rest of agriculture, right? So, it's unjust to be to be fined or shut down or get in trouble for genetics that you don't even want on your property that crossbred with your own shit, and really it should be viewed as contamination that they get in trouble for, right? But they don't, and that's a problem, I think, with the justice system generally, and I don't see a reason why it would be different in cannabis, frankly, which is maybe a doomsday horrible thing to say, but I mean...
Wow. Getting dark again.
Sorry.
So
Good,
on a-
Max, do you have any comments on this? Can you
some
say something
levity?
positive?
So on a lighter note, I wonder if
Monsanto's a bunch of dickheads.
That's not positive. That's not helping.
But it's funnier.
It is funnier. Fair.
So
Michael smiled.
I-
Sorta.
I wonder, Max, before we sign off, if you could tell us about.
Wait, I thought this was a 6-hour.
Yeah.
Tell us about your
Before hour one
your
ends.
fashion choice for today.
Oh, about my fashion choice? Well, I don't know. Here, let's.
No, she's asking about the hat. Clearly.
Oh, the whole
I'm
ensemble.
I'm kidding.
The whole on.
It just seemed like a good day to get a little breeze going on, and Hickey Fest was about 2 months ago, and it's good just to keep it in my thoughts. Yeah.
Hickey Fest.
Hickey Fest.
It's not like Hickey Fest, by
Oh.
the way.
Could be.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's not.
But it's not.
Yeah, it's too bad.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Any other questions from the audience that, especially, ones that won't cause us to do a really long one?
Before we wrap up, on my talk show, the Max Savage Show, I have a propensity to provide life-changing gifts for my guests.
Oh, wow. We should start
And,
doing that.
Oh man.
Brought
You're
some
so
stuff for you
inadequate.
guys. Carter, here's a Bonnie Raitt tape for you.
Actually, this is life-changing.
Oh my God.
I am old
Wait,
enough that I actually really liked Bonnie Raitt.
Can we get a zoom in on that tape?
Yeah, here, wait. I don't think we can zoom. I can stick it here. I'll stick it on in front of the camera. Which camera do you want?
Yeah.
This camera? That
Nice.
camera? What camera? I don't know.
There you go.
Oh wait, we're getting a zoom.
Wait, we're gonna get a zoom. Thank you, Jesse.
Pull it in closer.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
There it is.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right.
I think this is
Bonnie
really going to
Raitt.
be a game changer.
Yeah, this is pretty great.
Now you have
Yeah.
to find a cassette player though.
That's true.
Oh, wait.
I'm old enough that I have a cassette player, buddy. Yeah, like-
And Ben, I got you a tape too from really great.
Where
Yeah.
are we?
San Francisco surf rock band Spooky Mansion.
Oh, spooky music.
Yeah, they're great.
Wow.
It's
look
gonna
at that.
change your life.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Yep.
going.
Thank
Do
you,
you think I
man.
could get
Oh,
a
yeah.
cassette player on Amazon?
You can. I probably have more than one actually.
Where do you get cassette tapes?
Where do I get cassette
No,
tapes?
where do you get cassette tapes?
Urbanor.
Okay.
That's pretty cool.
Well, that one came from Spooky Mansion. That one came from Urbanor.
That's pretty
I
awesome.
bet.
Thank you.
I bet you could find cassette tapes if you looked.
Oh, this is awesome.
It's probably.
It's just a blast from the past.
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
Max, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's been a great time.
What should people do if they desperately want you to interview them?
What should they do if they desperately want me to interview them? I don't know. Like, invite me out for a cup of tea or something.
All right, there you go. What kind of tea?
This green tea was really good.
Okay.
This was Lipton Green.
Great,
Only
so-
the best for our guests.
He's a cheap date.
Wait, was that when I
bribe
was
him with?
was that when I
bribe-
was supposed to say like what my email address is or something? Was
no,
that?
I don't care.
the
Say
pitch?
you. What do you want? How do people reach you on Twitter or
Max
email?
Savage.
Oh,
Now
I haven't
on
used
Twitter?
Twitter in
What
couple of
channels
years.
should they use to get to you?
Comment on the Max
Gmail's
Savage show.
Gmail's pretty good.
Gmail. Do you
Yeah.
want to give out your email address? or
Yeah,
no?
that's fine.
Okay.
It's M Savage Leveson at Gmail
All right.
dot something. Yeah.
Com.
Something
.com.
or other.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And then and just mention green tea, and
Yeah.
they're good.
The
then they're real
magic
good.
password.
Awesome.
Yeah. I'll interview anyone except.
People you don't want to interview.
Oh wait, I like it when we name drop. This is good.
I couldn't interview Mitch McConnell.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah.
that would be fascinating.
Could you interview Jeff Sessions? Because I really can. I would like to be there.
Oh, I would love to interview Jeff Sessions.
Okay.
That sounds.
Start with the suit and then end up in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Make him
sounds
feel really
great.
uncomfortable.
There's just something so. Yeah, we don't have to go into this right at the end.
Yeah.
No.
I think being within like a quarter of a mile of Mitch McConnell would just like. It'd be like receiving a vasectomy.
Okay, so you would.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's like, but it's probably not fun.
Just a hunch.
Yeah.
Someday you'll probably.
Yeah.
you know.
Well, thank you, Ben. This is where the conversation needed to go.
Yeah. All right.
On that note,
Let's wrap it up. Max, thank you so much.
Thanks,
thank you for the
guys.
gifts.
My pleasure.
This was awesome.
Thanks for having me. It's been a great time.
thanks
Yeah.
for coming.
Really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Rock on.
All
All
right,
right.
guys.
Next week, we will have fewer technical difficulties, but also no Ben, right?
No Ben, but Claudio Miranda from Guild will be here.
Yes, and we'll geek out on something or other.
Yeah.
I want
TCV is
I actually
the-
want it to be a semi like technical. I want to geek out a
I
little
think that's
bit.
good because he's really drilling down into kind of separating the cannabinoids and
Yeah.
providing those.
and
MSCL.
I was never good at chemistry, so I want some.
Oh, well,
want
you're
some
about
help.
to get schooled.
Yeah, I want to get school.
There you go.
All right, thanks
See
everyone.
you guys next. Well, I'll see you in 2 weeks. All right.
Yeah,
Peace.
See you next week. Bye.